The Valdrani Empire had ruled the outer spiral for 12,000 years. Their warships moved through space like silver ghosts, their technology so advanced that lesser species simply surrendered at the sight of their fleets. Commander Torvax stood on the bridge of the Eternal Blade, the flagship of the Third Expansion Fleet, and watched the blue planet grow larger on the viewing screen. "Such a small world," he said, his 4 eyes narrowing with amusement. "And they have only been traveling between stars for what? 60 of their years?" His tactical officer, a younger Valdrani named Celix, checked the data streams flowing across her console. 63 years since their first faster-than-light journey, Commander. They have established 17 colonies across 12 star systems. Their population beyond their homeworld numbers approximately 4 billion. Torvax made a sound of dismissal. "Infant species. They probably still celebrate when they discover how to grow food in artificial environments." He turned to face his senior staff, all of them tall and elegant with their gray skin and multiple limbs. "This will be a simple introduction. We will demonstrate our superiority. They will recognize the wisdom of joining the Empire as a client species, and we will add their worlds to our territory before the next cycle." The bridge crew exchanged knowing looks. They had done this many times before. The pattern never changed. New species emerged into the galaxy, excited and hopeful, and then they met the Valdrani. Some fought briefly, most simply accepted their place in the natural order. The strong ruled. The weak served. This was the way of things. "Bring us into orbit around their primary colony world," Torvax ordered. "The one they call New Geneva. I want them to see what a real starship looks like." The Eternal Blade was massive. Nearly 3 kilometers long, it carried enough firepower to reduce a continent to glass. Behind it followed 40 support vessels, each one capable of defeating anything the humans might possess. This was not an invasion fleet. This was simply a display of power, an invitation that could not be refused. As they approached the planet, Celix frowned at her readings. "Commander, I am detecting significant orbital infrastructure, far more than our initial scan suggested." "Define significant." 17 orbital stations, multiple shipyard facilities, and... She paused, rechecking the data. "Commander, there are 247 vessels in orbit or in the immediate system space." Torvax felt a flicker of surprise but pushed it aside. Numbers meant nothing without capability. "What class of vessels?" "Mixed. The largest appear to be approximately 800 meters in length. Crude designs, heavy armor plating. They appear to favor kinetic weapons and missile systems." "Primitive," Torvax said. "They have not even discovered directed energy technology. This confirms they are exactly what we expected. Proceed with the approach. Broadcast our standard greeting on all frequencies." The communication officer activated the translation systems and began transmitting. The message was ancient, used for countless first contacts. It announced the arrival of the Valdrani Empire and extended an invitation for the native species to discuss terms of integration. It was polite in its wording, but absolute in its meaning. Resistance was futile. Cooperation was wisdom. For several minutes, there was no response. "Perhaps they need time to understand the message," Celix suggested. "Perhaps they are simply stunned by our magnificence," another officer said, and the bridge crew laughed. Then the response came. A human face appeared on the viewing screen. It belonged to a female of their species, perhaps middle-aged by their standards, with short gray hair and cold eyes. She wore a uniform of dark blue with symbols of rank on her shoulders. Her expression showed no fear, no awe, no confusion. She looked at them the way Torvax might look at an unexpected insect in his food. "This is Admiral Catherine Stone of the United Earth Defense Force," she said, her voice flat and controlled. "I have received your message. I have a response." Torvax smiled. showing his rows of small teeth. "Excellent. I am Commander Torvax of the Valdrani Empire. We come to offer you a place within our—" "Your ships will reverse course immediately," Admiral Stone interrupted. "You will withdraw to a distance of no less than 5 light minutes from this planet. You will then await further instructions. Failure to comply will be considered an act of war." The bridge fell silent. Torvax stared at the screen, certain he had misunderstood. "I do not think you comprehend the situation. Look at your sensors. Count our vessels. Measure our weapons. We are not asking for negotiation. We are informing you of reality." Admiral Stone's expression did not change. "I have looked at your sensors. I have counted your vessels. I have measured your weapons." She leaned slightly forward. "Commander, in my career I have fought in 4 major wars and 11 minor conflicts. I have personally commanded fleets that burned enemy homeworlds to ash. I have lost friends, colleagues, and family members to violence. I do not make threats. I state facts. You will withdraw or you will die. The choice is yours." The transmission ended. Torvax stood motionless for a long moment. Then he began to laugh. "She has courage. I will grant her that. Misplaced foolish courage, but courage nonetheless." He settled into his command chair. "All ships advance to optimal weapons range. Target their largest vessels first. We will give them a demonstration they will never forget." The Valdrani fleet moved forward in perfect formation. This was not the first time a species had shown defiance. It was a natural response, born of ignorance. Once they witnessed the power of the Empire, their resistance would crumble. It always did. "Weapons range in 4 minutes," Celix reported. Then she frowned. "Commander, the human vessels they are not retreating." "Of course not. They want to appear brave for their people. They will break once we fire." "No, Commander. They are advancing. All of them. They are moving to intercept us at full acceleration." Torvax watched the tactical display. The human ships, all 247 of them, had broken from orbit and were now rushing toward his fleet. They moved in a formation that seemed chaotic at first glance, but was actually covering multiple approach angles. It was a classic encirclement maneuver, the kind used by species that understood warfare. "Interesting," he murmured. "They have some tactical education. It will not help them. All ships prepare for engagement. Remember, we want prisoners for integration. Try not to destroy everything." The distance closed rapidly. The human ships were faster than expected, their acceleration rates pushing the limits of what Valdrani scientists believed possible for vessels of that size. They were not elegant like Valdrani craft. They were blocky, angular things, covered in armor plates and weapons emplacements. They looked like machines designed by creatures who expected to fight and die. "Weapons range in 60 seconds, Celix announced. "Commander, I am reading unusual energy signatures from the human vessels. They appear to be charging some kind of—" The first human ship fired. It was not a directed energy weapon. It was not a plasma beam or a graviton pulse or any of the sophisticated technologies the Valdrani employed. It was a solid projectile, a piece of metal accelerated to a significant fraction of the speed of light, and it struck the Eternal Blade's forward shields with enough force to make the entire ship shudder. Then more projectiles came. Hundreds of them. Thousands. The viewing screen filled with streaks of light as the human fleet unleashed a coordinated barrage of kinetic weapons. Each individual projectile was primitive, yes, but there were so many of them, and they were moving so fast, and they kept coming without pause. "Shields holding," Celix reported, her voice tight. "Forward shield generators at 87% capacity, 74%, 61%. "Return fire," Torvax shouted. "All vessels return fire immediately." The Valdrani fleet responded with beams of concentrated energy that lanced across space. Several human vessels took direct hits, their armor glowing white-hot. But they did not explode. They did not break apart. They kept coming, trailing fire and atmosphere, their weapons still firing. "Why are they not destroyed?" Torvax demanded. "The armor, Commander. It is some kind of layered composite. Our weapons are damaging them but not penetrating to critical systems. And they are not evading. They are absorbing our fire." On the tactical display, Torvax watched as a human vessel took 3 direct hits from Valdrani beam weapons. Its hull was scarred and burned, venting gas from multiple breaches, and yet it continued its advance, launching another volley of kinetic projectiles before finally being struck by a 4th beam that punched through to its reactor core. The ship exploded, but not before its final missiles had already left their tubes. "They are not trying to survive," Celix whispered. "They are trying to reach us." The first human ship entered close range. It was a cruiser-class vessel, already burning from multiple hits, half its weapons destroyed. But it had made it through the Valdrani fire, and now it opened up with everything it had left. Point-blank kinetic rounds tore into the Eternal Blade's shields, followed by nuclear-tipped missiles that detonated against the barrier in blinding flashes. "Forward shields failing!" someone screamed. More human ships pushed through. They were dying, yes, but they were not dying easily, and they were not dying quietly. Each vessel that fell took Valdrani ships with it. Each explosion was followed by another wave of missiles, another barrage of projectiles. The neat formation of the Valdrani fleet began to fragment as individual captains tried to avoid the relentless human advance. Admiral Stone's face appeared on the screen again. Behind her, Torvax could see her bridge crew working frantically at their stations, but her expression remained unchanged, calm, patient, almost bored. "Commander Torvax," she said, "you have lost 7 vessels. We have lost 23. At this rate of exchange, we will both be destroyed within the hour. Is that what you want? Mutual annihilation?" Torvax gripped the arms of his chair. "You are insane! You are throwing your ships away." "Yes," she agreed. "That is what we do. We count the cost, we accept it, and we pay it. That is how we won every war we ever fought. Not through superior technology, not through greater numbers, through sheer, stubborn, bloody-minded willingness to die for what we believe in." She paused. "We have been fighting each other for our entire history. We are very, very good at it." Another Valdrani ship exploded on the tactical display, then another. "You have 40 vessels," Admiral Stone continued. "We have 224 remaining. But more importantly, Commander, we have shipyards. We have factories. We have 17 colonies full of people who are, right now, watching this battle and volunteering for military service. We are a species that industrialized total war before we discovered fire was useful for anything other than burning our enemies. How many ships can you lose before your empire notices? How many before they send reinforcements? And how many reinforcements do you think it will take?" Torvax looked at his crew. He saw fear in their eyes. Not the fear of death, but the fear of something they did not understand. The Valdrani had conquered species for 12,000 years. They had perfected the art of domination, but they had never in all that time encountered a species that treated war as a natural state of existence. "What do you want?" he asked quietly. "I told you what I wanted. Withdraw to 5 light minutes. Await further instructions." Admiral Stone's lips curved into something that might have been a smile but looked more like a threat. "We will discuss terms. I suspect you have much to learn about us, and we have much to learn about your empire." The smile disappeared. "But understand this clearly, Commander. We are not rookies. We are not infants. We are humanity. And we have been preparing for something like you since before we left our home world." The transmission ended. Torvax sat in silence for a long moment. Around him, his officers waited for orders. The battle continued to rage, but more slowly now, as both sides pulled back from the most intense fighting. The humans had made their point. They had proven that they would fight and die and keep fighting until there was nothing left. "All ships," Torvax finally said, his voice hollow. "Withdraw to the coordinates specified. Await further orders." As the Eternal Blade turned away from New Geneva, Torvax stared at the tactical display. 23 human ships destroyed, 7 Valdrani vessels lost. Those numbers were not supposed to be possible. Those numbers represented something that should not exist, a species that could match the Empire in combat after only 60 years among the stars. He did not know it yet, but those numbers were just the beginning. The humans had more than ships and weapons. They had something far more dangerous. They had experience. They had history. They had 10,000 years of warfare written into their very souls. And they were just getting started. The diplomatic shuttle descended through the atmosphere of New Geneva under heavy escort. 8 human fighters flanked it on all sides, their weapons hot and tracking, ready to destroy the Valdrani vessel at the first sign of treachery. Inside the shuttle, Ambassador Velik tried to maintain his composure, but the shaking of his secondary hands betrayed his anxiety. He had been chosen for this mission because of his reputation for handling difficult species. In 2 centuries of service to the Empire, he had negotiated the surrender of 14 civilizations. He had turned hostile races into loyal client species. He knew how to read alien psychology, how to find weaknesses, how to exploit them. But as the shuttle broke through the clouds and the human city spread out below him, he felt something he had not experienced in a very long time: uncertainty. The city was called Geneva Prime, the capital of the human colony. From above, it looked almost normal. Buildings, streets, parks, transportation networks, the usual infrastructure of a developing civilization, but there were differences that troubled him. The buildings were spread far apart, with wide spaces between them. The transportation routes did not follow efficient patterns, but instead seemed designed to maximize alternative routes. And there were structures that his instruments could not identify, buried deep beneath the surface. "They build their cities expecting them to be bombed," his aide whispered. "They plan for destruction." Velik said nothing. He had noticed the same thing. He had also noticed the missile batteries on the rooftops, the fighter patrols in the sky, the warships visible even from the surface, hanging in orbit like patient predators. Everything about this world spoke of a species that lived with the constant expectation of violence. The shuttle landed on a platform outside a large governmental building. Human soldiers lined the walkway, standing at attention with weapons held across their chests. They wore body armor that covered them from head to toe, their faces hidden behind visored helmets. They looked like machines. They did not move. They did not speak. They simply watched as the Valdrani delegation emerged from their vessel. Admiral Stone was waiting for them. She looked exactly as she had on the view screen, perhaps smaller in person, but no less intimidating. She wore her dress uniform now, decorated with medals and ribbons that Velik assumed represented her military achievements. Beside her stood a tall man in civilian clothing, his gray hair cut short, his face lined with age and experience. "Ambassador Velik," Stone said, "welcome to New Geneva. This is Secretary General Marcus Webb, the elected leader of the United Earth Government." Velik bowed in the Valdrani manner. "Thank you for receiving us. I hope this meeting will begin a new era of understanding between our peoples." "Understanding," Webb repeated. The word seemed to amuse him. "Yes, I think you will come to understand us quite well, Ambassador. Please, follow me." They walked into the building, passing through multiple security checkpoints. At each one, the Valdrani were scanned by instruments, their belongings examined, their identities verified. It was thorough, professional, and completely without hostility. The humans were not being rude, they were simply being careful. The same way they had been careful when they built their city. the same way they had been careful when they designed their ships. The meeting room was large but simple. A long table dominated the center, with chairs arranged on either side. The walls were decorated with images that Velik did not immediately understand. Paintings of landscapes, photographs of people, maps of places he did not recognize, and flags. Dozens of different flags, each one representing something meaningful to the humans. "Please sit," Webb said, gesturing to one side of the table. "We have much to discuss." Velik sat, arranging his robes carefully. His aide took a position behind him, ready to provide information or support as needed. Across the table, Admiral Stone and Secretary General Webb were joined by several other humans, military and civilian alike. They all carried data devices. They all had the same watchful, evaluating expression. "I will begin," Velik said, falling into his practiced rhythm. "The Valdrani Empire understands that our initial contact was confrontational. We regret any loss of life. It is our hope that we can move past this unfortunate incident and establish a productive relationship." "Productive," Stone said flatly. "You mean a relationship where we serve you?" "The Empire offers many benefits to its client species: protection, technology, access to trade networks spanning thousands of star systems. All we ask in return is cooperation and loyalty." Webb leaned forward. "Ambassador, let me save us both some time. We have been studying your empire since the moment your fleet arrived. We have intercepted and decoded your communications. We have analyzed your technology. We have researched your history." He tapped his data device, and a holographic display appeared above the table, showing a map of the galaxy. "You control approximately 400 star systems. You have incorporated 37 species into your empire, all of them as subordinate members. None of them have any meaningful autonomy. None of them have any military capability of their own. They exist to serve Valdrani interests." Velik felt his secondary hands tremble again. "You have been thorough. We are always thorough. It is one of our defining characteristics." Webb manipulated the display, zooming in on a particular region. "This is the Corvalian cluster. 12 years ago, a species called the Corvali refused your invitation to join the Empire. You destroyed their civilization. 18 billion dead. Their homeworld was rendered uninhabitable. The Corvali were aggressive and unreasonable. They threatened the stability of the region." "They said no," Stone said. "That was their crime. Saying no." Velik straightened in his chair. "You must understand the necessity of order. The galaxy is dangerous. Without the Empire to maintain stability, there would be chaos, war, suffering on an unimaginable scale." Webb laughed. It was not a pleasant sound. "Ambassador, I grew up on Earth. I studied our history. Let me tell you about suffering on an unimaginable scale." He began to list events, his voice steady and calm. "In the 20th century alone, we fought 2 global wars that killed over 100 million of our own people. We developed weapons capable of destroying entire cities in seconds, and then built enough of them to end all life on our planet several times over. We committed genocides against our own kind. We enslaved each other. We invented new and creative ways to cause pain and death that would horrify your worst nightmares." He paused, letting the words settle. "And then we kept going," he continued. "We did not destroy ourselves. We did not collapse into barbarism. We learned. We adapted. We built institutions to prevent the worst of our nature while still preserving the best. We created laws and treaties and alliances. We fought, and we negotiated, and we compromised. We failed many times. We succeeded just enough, and eventually, we reached the stars." Stone picked up the narrative. "When we left our solar system, we expected to find threats. We had always lived with threats. We built our first interstellar ships with weapons already installed because we could not imagine a universe without conflict. Every colony we established was designed with defense in mind. Every technology we developed was evaluated for military application. We did not do this because we were paranoid. We did this because we knew ourselves. You see, Ambassador, Webb said, we are not surprised by your empire. We are not shocked by your methods. We have done all of it ourselves, to ourselves, for thousands of years. The only difference is that we did it first, and we learned lessons that you apparently never had to learn. Velik tried to regain control of the conversation. And what lessons would those be? That conquest has limits, Stone answered. That occupation breeds resistance, that every empire, no matter how powerful, eventually falls. We built empires on Earth, many of them. They all collapsed. Some lasted centuries, some lasted millennia, but they all ended, usually in blood and fire. We learned that the most sustainable relationships are those built on mutual benefit rather than domination. Pretty words, Velik said, allowing some of his frustration to show. But you cannot deny the reality of power. The strong rule. The weak serve. This is not Valdrani philosophy. This is universal truth. Webb smiled. It was the smile of a man who held all the cards and knew it. Ambassador, your fleet has withdrawn to the outer system as agreed. Your commander Torvax is currently sending encrypted messages to your homeworld, requesting instructions and reinforcements. We know this because we have been reading his communications in real time. He tapped his device again, and text appeared on the display, translated Valdrani script. He has informed your government that the humans are more dangerous than expected. He has recommended a full military response, 12 additional battle groups minimum. Velik felt cold. How do you... We have been intercepting and decoding your communications since the first day you arrived. Your encryption is sophisticated but not unbreakable. We have had access to everything, every order, every report, every personal message between your crew members. Webb's smile widened. You should tell Commander Torvax that his wife sends her love, and that their third offspring is progressing well in school. The room fell silent. Admiral Stone stood and walked to the window, looking out at the city. When your reinforcements arrive, Ambassador, we will fight them. We will lose ships and crews and people we care about. So will you. And when that battle is over, you will send for more ships, and we will fight those too. This cycle will continue until one of us is destroyed or until one of us decides that the cost is too high. She turned back to face him. But here is what you need to understand. We are not fighting for survival. We are fighting because fighting is what we do. We are a species that clawed its way to dominance on a world that tried to kill us with ice ages, plagues, natural disasters, and predators. We competed against each other so fiercely that we drove ourselves to the edge of extinction multiple times. And we always came back, stronger, smarter, more determined. Webb nodded. The Valdrani Empire has existed for 12,000 years. Impressive, truly. But our recorded history goes back further than that. And before recording, there were 100,000 years of struggle that shaped us into what we are. Every generation of humanity has known war. Every generation has known loss. Every generation has learned to adapt, to overcome, to find new ways to win. What are you saying? Velik asked. I am saying that we have been preparing for you since before we knew you existed, Webb replied. Not you specifically, but something like you, an external threat that would require everything we had to defeat. We built our military expecting to face extinction-level dangers. We designed our society to survive long wars. We trained our people to accept sacrifice as a natural part of existence. He stood and leaned on the table, his eyes boring into Velik's. You came here expecting to find rookies. New species usually are. They discover space travel, they expand for a few centuries, and then they meet a power like yours, and they fold. That is the pattern. That is what you understand. But we are not new species. We are old, Ambassador. We are the product of millions of years of evolution on a world that never stopped trying to kill us. We are survivors of 1,000 wars against ourselves. We are the descendants of people who looked at impossible odds and said, "We can take them." Admiral Stone returned to the table. "So here is our counteroffer. You can continue this conflict. You can bring your reinforcements. You can commit to a war that will cost you more than you can imagine. Or you can recognize that we are not client species material. We are partners, equals. A civilization that will work with you, trade with you, even fight beside you against common enemies, but we will never serve you." Velik looked at the humans around the table. He saw no bluffing, no false confidence. They meant every word, and worse, they had the capability to back it up. The Valdrani Empire had never faced a species like this, a species that had already conquered itself, that had already survived its own worst impulses, that had emerged from its own crucible of fire and blood. "I will need to consult with my government," he said finally. "Of course," Webb said graciously. "Take all the time you need, but remember, Ambassador, every day you delay is a day we spend building more ships, training more soldiers, and studying your technology. We are very fast learners. It is another one of our defining characteristics." As Velik was escorted back to his shuttle, he passed by a wall covered in photographs. One caught his eye. It showed a small group of humans standing on barren ground, wearing primitive suits, with a flag planted beside them. A caption identified it as the first moon landing, centuries ago. Such a short time, such a small species, and yet they had already conquered their own moon before they had finished conquering each other. They had reached for the stars while still fighting wars at home. They had built an interstellar civilization in 60 years, a task that had taken the Valdrani nearly 3 centuries. Velik understood now why Commander Torvax had withdrawn. It was not the ships or the weapons or the tactics. It was the look in Admiral Stone's eyes, the absolute unshakable certainty that she would win or die trying. The complete absence of the fear that every other species showed when confronted with Valdrani power. The humans were not afraid because fear was something they had already mastered, long before the Valdrani had ever existed. As his shuttle lifted off, Velik began composing his report. It would be the most important document of his career. It would change everything the Empire believed about galactic civilization. And at its core would be a simple message that the High Council would struggle to accept. The humans were not rookies. They had never been rookies. They were something far more dangerous than the Valdrani had ever imagined. They were equals. The Valdrani High Council convened in the ancient chamber of their homeworld, a place where decisions affecting trillions of lives had been made for over 10,000 years. 12 High Counselors sat in a circle, their gray faces illuminated by the soft glow of holographic displays. At the center of the circle, a 3-dimensional map of human territory rotated slowly, marking their 17 colonies and the surrounding space. "Ambassador Velik's report is disturbing," said Counselor Thresh, the eldest among them. "He suggests that we should treat these humans as equals. This is unprecedented." "It is also insulting," Counselor Merak added. "We are the Valdrani Empire. We do not negotiate with inferior species. We integrate them, or we destroy them. There is no third option." The debate had been raging for hours. Some counselors favored overwhelming military action. Others expressed caution, citing the losses Commander Torvax had already suffered. A few quietly wondered if Velik might be right, though they dared not say so openly. At the far end of the chamber, Grand Admiral Torvax the Elder stood in silence. He had listened to every word, his 4 eyes watching the faces of his fellow leaders. Unlike the civilians who dominated the council, he had spent his life in military service. He understood war in ways they never would. And he had spent the last several days studying every piece of information available about the human species. Grand Admiral, Counselor Thresh said, finally acknowledging him. You have been uncharacteristically quiet. The Council would value your assessment. Torvex stepped forward into the center of the circle. He was old for a Valdrani, nearly 4 centuries, and his gray skin had taken on the darker hues of advanced age. But his mind was as sharp as ever, and his voice carried the weight of countless campaigns. I have reviewed the battle data from Commander Torvax's engagement, he began. I have analyzed the human vessels, their tactics, their weapons systems, and their crew behavior. I have also studied the intelligence gathered by Ambassador Velik's team during the diplomatic meeting. Allow me to share what I have learned. He manipulated the holographic display, bringing up footage from the battle. Human ships advanced toward the Valdrani fleet, taking hits, burning, dying, and still pressing forward. In this engagement, we destroyed 23 human vessels. They destroyed 7 of ours. On the surface, this appears to be a favorable exchange ratio, but look closer. He highlighted several of the destroyed human ships. These vessels were already heavily damaged when they closed to point-blank range. Their captains chose to continue the attack rather than withdraw. They sacrificed themselves to ensure their weapons reached their targets. He changed the display to show crew statistics. Our intelligence indicates that survival rates for human crews in damaged ships were extremely low, not because they could not escape, but because they chose not to. When their vessels were crippled, they continued fighting. When their weapons failed, they rammed our ships. When capture was imminent, they destroyed their own vessels rather than surrender. Fanaticism, Counselor Merak said dismissively. We have encountered fanatical species before. No, Torvex replied. We have encountered species that fight fanatically when pushed to extremes. The humans are different. This is not fanaticism born of religious fervor or cultural indoctrination. This is a calculated military doctrine. They train their people to accept death as a tactical option. They build their ships knowing they will be destroyed. They plan their strategies assuming massive casualties. He brought up another image, this one showing the interior of a captured human escape pod. The crew had been recovered alive, but what interested Torvex was the equipment they carried. Every human soldier is equipped with personal weapons, survival gear, and demolition charges. The demolition charges are sufficient to destroy their own equipment and inflict damage on any enemy that captures them. They are trained to use these charges on themselves, if necessary, to prevent information from falling into enemy hands. He paused. They call this doctrine operational security. We would call it institutionalized suicide. The council fell silent. But that is not what concerns me most, Torvex continued. What concerns me is their industrial capacity. He changed the display again, showing the orbital installations around New Geneva. In the 63 years since they achieved faster-than-light travel, the humans have built 17 colonies. Each colony has its own manufacturing base. Each colony is capable of producing warships independently. And each colony is already transitioning to full military production. He highlighted the shipyards. Our analysts estimate that the humans can produce a new warship every 8 standard days from their existing facilities. They are currently expanding those facilities at a rate we have never observed in any species. Within 1 standard year, their production rate will double. Within 5 years, they will be capable of producing more warships annually than our entire combined fleet. Impossible, a counselor said. No species develops that quickly. No species we have encountered, Torvex corrected. But the humans are not like any species we have encountered. They industrialized their own homeworld in less than 3 centuries. They went from primitive combustion engines to nuclear weapons in less than 50 years. They have a term for this phenomenon. They call it technological sprint. When motivated by existential threat, their innovation rate increases exponentially. He displayed a timeline of human technological development. The council watched in growing horror as they saw how quickly the humans had advanced. Firearms to nuclear weapons, ground-based transportation to space travel, chemical rockets to faster-than-light drives. Each leap took less time than the one before. "They are not slowing down," Torvex said quietly. "Our encounter with them has been classified as an existential threat by their government. Every human colony is now operating under emergency production protocols. Every able-bodied citizen is receiving military training. Every research institution is focused on weapons development." He turned to face the council directly. "They captured fragments of our shield technology during the battle. They have already reverse-engineered it. By the time our reinforcements arrive, they will have their own version installed on their ships." Counselor Thresh looked troubled. "Grand Admiral, you paint a grim picture. What do you recommend?" Torvex was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was heavy with the weight of his conclusion. "I recommend we accept Ambassador Velik's assessment. We should negotiate with the humans as equals, establish trade relations, share technology, integrate them into galactic civilization as partners rather than subjects." The council erupted. Voices shouted in protest. Councillor Marak actually rose from his seat, his face dark with anger. "You would have us submit to these primitives, acknowledge them as our equals. The Empire has never faced this situation." Torvex cut him off. "We have always been the dominant power. Every species we encountered was either too weak to resist or too divided to coordinate. The humans are neither. They are unified by a history of conflict against themselves, tempered by the struggle for survival on a hostile world. They understand war better than we do because they have been fighting it for their entire existence." He brought up one final image. It showed human soldiers training, fighting, dying in simulated combat. Their faces were determined. Their movements were precise. They did not hesitate. They did not flinch. "We became complacent," Torvex said. 12,000 years of easy conquests made us believe we were invincible. But we were simply lucky. We never encountered a true challenge. The humans are that challenge. They are what we would have been if we had faced the trials they faced. They are us, taken to an extreme we cannot match." Counselor Thresh leaned forward. "And if we attack? If we bring the full might of the Empire against them? We will win the first battles," Torvex admitted. "We have more ships, more resources, more experience with galactic warfare. But every battle will cost us more than it costs them. Every year the war continues, they will grow stronger while we grow weaker. Eventually they will match us, and then they will surpass us. It might take 10 years, it might take 50, but it will happen. Their history proves that they do not give up. Ever." The Grand Admiral walked to the edge of the circle and looked out a window at the city below. The capital of the Valdrani Empire, home to billions of citizens who had never known true war, who had lived for generations in the comfort of absolute security. "If we fight the humans to extinction, we will spend ourselves in the process. Other species will see our weakness. The client races will grow restless. Our enemies in other sectors will move against us. By the time we destroy humanity, we will have destroyed ourselves." He turned back to the council. "Or we can accept them as partners. We can learn from them. We can incorporate their strength into our own. 100 years from now, the combined Valdrani-human alliance could dominate this entire region of the galaxy." The council debated for 3 more days. Delegations came and went, reports were reviewed and re-reviewed, arguments were made and countered, but in the end, the mathematics were inescapable. The humans were too strong to conquer without crippling losses. They were too valuable to destroy. They were too dangerous to ignore. On the 4th day, the High Council issued its decision. The Valdrani Empire would recognize the United Earth government as an equal sovereign power. Trade and diplomatic relations would be established. Technology-sharing agreements would be negotiated, and for the first time in 12,000 years, the Valdrani would have allies instead of subjects. When Admiral Stone received the message, she was on the bridge of her new flagship, the UES Resilience. It was larger than any human ship before it, incorporating technologies developed in the frantic weeks since the first battle. Already rumors said it carried weapons that could challenge Valdrani capital ships directly. "Well," Secretary General Webb said, his image appearing on her personal screen, "it seems they made the smart choice." Stone read the message again, her expression unreadable. "They did. I almost wish they hadn't." "You wanted to fight them?" "I wanted to know if we could beat them. Really beat them, not just make them bleed." She looked out at the stars. "Now we will never know." Webb smiled. "Perhaps that is for the best. Some questions are better left unanswered." He paused. "The Council has approved the treaty terms. We will begin formal negotiations next week. I want you to lead the military delegation." "Understood." Stone straightened in her chair. "Sir, what do you think the galaxy will look like in 100 years?" "I have no idea," Webb admitted, "but I suspect humanity will have something to say about it. We always do." When the treaty was signed 6 months later, it marked the beginning of a new era in galactic history. The Valdrani had expected to absorb a young species into their empire. Instead, they had awakened something ancient, something forged in the fires of 1,000 wars, something that had spent its entire existence preparing for exactly this moment. The other species of the galaxy watched with interest. Some felt hope for the first time in millennia. If the humans could stand against the Valdrani, perhaps others could too. Perhaps the old order was not as permanent as it seemed. In the decades that followed, the Human-Valdrani alliance reshaped galactic civilization. Human innovations combined with Valdrani resources created technologies neither species could have developed alone. Human military tactics transformed how wars were fought. Human culture, with its strange mix of violence and compassion, spread to worlds that had never known anything like it. And through it all, the humans remained exactly what they had always been: stubborn, creative, dangerous, determined. A species that had climbed out of the mud, conquered its own worst impulses, and reached for the stars with bloody hands and hopeful hearts. The Valdrani had thought they were meeting rookies. Instead, they had met equals. And equals, they discovered, were far more valuable than subjects could ever be. On the anniversary of the first contact, Commander Torvax, now promoted to Admiral and serving as the Valdrani liaison to Earth, visited the memorial dedicated to those who had died in the initial battle. Human and Valdrani names were inscribed side by side, enemies who had become allies, warriors who had earned each other's respect through blood and fire. Admiral Stone stood beside him, older now, but still carrying the same cold fire in her eyes. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked. "Coming to our space? Threatening our world?" Torvax considered the question. "I regret the lives lost. I regret my arrogance. But the outcome?" He shook his head slowly. "No. The Empire needed to meet you. We needed to remember what it meant to face a true challenge. You have made us better." Stone nodded. "And you have given us something we never had before. A universe beyond our own wars. A purpose beyond survival." She smiled, and for once it reached her eyes. "I suppose that makes us even." They stood together in silence, two warriors from different worlds, watching the sun set over a galaxy that would never be the same. The first encounter had collapsed everything the Valdrani believed about their place in the universe. But from that collapse, something new had been born. Something stronger, something that would endure. Humanity had proven once again what it had proven throughout its entire existence. It was not the technology that mattered. It was not the resources. It was the will to survive, to adapt, to overcome. It was the stubborn, defiant, beautiful refusal to accept defeat. They were not rookies. They never had been. They were humanity, and the galaxy would never forget it.